I will be discussing the Tesla turbine and how it relates to renewable energy. This presentation includes a general overview, various applications relating to renewables in other fields, technical aspects, as well as proposed improvements for this device. Let's begin with the overview. On May 6, 1913, Nikola Tesla was granted patent number 1,061,206 for a turbine of his own design. A more descriptive name for Tesla's invention would be a bladeless thermodynamic transformer. Work may be produced by placing the turbine in between high and low pressure sinks. Alternatively, work may also be consumed to increase kinetic energy of the working fluid. This is achieved by exploiting boundary layer effect at the disk and fluid interface. Tesla devised a process to yield the described attributes as follows, referring to the prior art from his original patent. Fluid enters the turbine through nozzle 25 where it undergoes an initial compression. The circular geometry of the housing induces a curling effect as fluid drags along disks 13. Centrifugal forces are balanced by influx, further compressing the fluid as it approaches central orifice 14. Exhaust 20 may be redirected from the native axial expulsion to any desired direction and location. A similar process occurs naturally in hurricanes as high-temperature air swirls at elevation and finally exhausts down through the eye. There are plenty of applications for Tesla's turbine since it works as a motor generator machine or as a compressor diffuser pump. The first case, a dual-stage Tesla turbine, utilizes both machine and pump characteristics. The turbine side takes in fast air and produces most of the work. The shaft connects to another Tesla turbine, 3 times the volume of the first stage to aid in the removal of exhaust. Note that the central orifices on the outside must be plugged such that the exhaust can only travel between the 2 disk sets, instead of leaving the system. Additionally, the turbine side must be enclosed, while the pump disks may be left completely exposed provided the axial fluid transmission is encased. Next, consider the applications solely as a pump. Southwestern Controls demonstrates their collaboration with Tesla disc pumps to move large volumes of heterogeneous solutions. Oil drilling requires mud to be displaced out of active wells. Normally, this poses challenges as used mud comes back with rocks or gas pockets. Sending either of these contaminants through a conventional steady-state pump causes blade damage via impact or cavitation, respectively. These situations are irrelevant when using boundary layer disks since compression is induced by the fluid itself, as opposed to the trigonometric normal forces created by angled blades. In the event of a blockage, the adverse effects of pressure buildup are eliminated as the disks are allowed to spin freely within the stationary fluid. The final application I will cover is the Organic Rankine Cycle, otherwise referred to as an ORC. Rankine cycles are a great way to extract power from expanding fluids, whether it be from a temperature or pressure differential. Vaporizing a liquid consequently expands it to become a gas. Typically, Rankine cycles vaporize water into steam. ORCs vaporize organic fluids, hydrocarbons like butane, or refrigerants, because they boil more readily. The remainder of this presentation will discuss using refrigerants and a Tesla turbine for the ORC turbine, as shown in the geothermal power plant schematic. Technical aspects are obtained from a research paper by Yan Sung et al. For this ORC schematic, the organic expander between states 4 and 5 will be a Tesla turbine. This corresponds with the TS diagram. Work out is equivalent to the area to the left of the individual curve segments. It is apparent that step 4 to 5 produces the most work, while the pumping step 1 to 2, which helps motivate the system, consumes only a tiny portion of work relative to expansion. The goal of the research paper is to show how hardware design influences efficiencies based on various refrigerants. I have pulled a few notable relationships to further analyze Tesla's patent. X and xi are used as shorthand to make the equations more manageable. X is a dimensionless parameter directly proportional to the spacing between disks. It also includes fluid viscosity, disk radius, and mass flow rate. The accentuated W is the dimensionless relative velocity and is heavily influenced by the outer radius R1, but still has a dependency on disk spacing. Turbine power can be found by comparing the relative velocities at the disk radius and central orifice radius. Relating this back to the ORC, efficiency can be calculated by comparing the power generated by the turbine to the power consumed by the pump. As the table lays out, experimental efficiency increased with how fast the disks spun, all other things held constant. Predictions of thermal efficiency, represented in 3 dimensions, is inversely dependent on the dimensionless parameter x and relative velocity at the inlet. Keeping in mind that both rely on separation, the conclusion is drawn that efficiency improves if the disks are moved closer together, reducing the gap. To quote Tesla, "I don't care that they stole my idea. I care that they don't have any of their own." As such, and as the role I personally assumed by deciding to become an engineer, I feel I must propose some form of improvement to the cause. I graphed the general correlation that disk spacing has on relative inlet velocity. An inverse relationship comes to light with asymptotic behaviors approaching infinity as disks get increasingly further apart. Turbine output is a subtractive function of relative velocities at inlet and central orifice, and relative velocity is an embedded function within output that is dependent on disk spacing. To maximize work out, the inlet's relative velocity should be larger than the central orifice relative velocity. This can be achieved by designing disks that taper in thickness towards the shaft to allow for larger spacing near the exhaust, effectively reducing the exhaust's relative velocity and therefore producing more power.